His face was only inches from mine. The world around us had blurred into silence, just the two of us in the laundry room, lit by the dull glow of the overhead bulb. I had come in for a load of towels. He had followed, supposedly looking for something he'd lost. His breath wasn't heavy. His voice wasn't loud. There was no touching. No intention spoken aloud. But the way he looked at me, like he'd already imagined something we weren't supposed to say, shook something loose in me. I should go, I said, though my feet didn't move. He didn't answer. He just stood there. The air between us tightened like a thread about to snap. I could hear the TV playing from the living room, the clatter of plates from the kitchen, my husband's footsteps overhead. And then, before I begin the story and tell you how everything really happened, answer this question: would you be able to forgive a loved one's betrayal? It started with the suitcase. Not mine. His. I was the one who carried it from the trunk into our guest room, smiling through clenched teeth because that's what you do when your husband invites his nephew to stay the summer. You smile. You accommodate. You say things like make yourself at home, even when home already feels too crowded. He wasn't a boy anymore. That was the first thing I noticed. The last time I saw him, he was lanky and all knees. Now he was over 6 feet tall, dressed in black jeans and a clean-cut denim jacket, with a duffel bag slung over one shoulder like he was walking into a music video. I almost didn't recognize him. You remember the house? My husband asked as we all walked inside. He gestured around the same way he did when he gave first-time guests the tour, even though nothing had changed in 10 years, not the wallpaper, not the chipped banister, not the scuff on the living room floor from that time we dragged the Christmas tree in too quickly. Hard to forget, the nephew said. His voice had dropped a full octave. He looked at me when he said it, and I had to look away. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of him, at least, that's what I told myself. But every creak in the floorboards made me tense. Every shift in the shadows down the hallway felt like a reminder that something foreign had entered our house. By morning, I had convinced myself it was all in my head. Breakfast was loud. Too loud. My husband had always been a morning person, the kind who whistled while making pancakes and used way too many paper towels. The nephew sat at the table in a hoodie and ball cap, scrolling on his phone. Still like blueberries? I asked, plating pancakes. He looked up. Yeah. Thanks. There was a pause. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. The silence after his answer felt longer than it should have. My husband left around 9. Some quarterly meeting. Or maybe a hardware run. I didn't ask. It didn't matter. I started laundry. That's how I function, through doing. I was in the middle of sorting whites from colors when I noticed the guest bathroom door swing open. He walked out shirtless, steam following behind him like a second skin. Oh, I blurted, not expecting to see him. He paused. No apology. Just a raised brow. Didn't mean to scare you, he said. Didn't think anyone was around. I nodded, trying not to stare. I'm always around, I said, instantly regretting it. I sounded ridiculous. Like I was warning him. Or worse, inviting him. He walked past without another word. I stood frozen, holding a damp towel, pretending that moment hadn't lasted longer than it should have. Later that afternoon, he wandered into the kitchen while I was loading the dishwasher. You guys still go to that diner on Main? He asked, leaning against the fridge. On weekends, sometimes, I said, not looking at him. They still do those weird milkshakes with the candy stuck to the sides? You remember that? He smiled. It was the best part of visiting you. I swallowed. They're still there. He stepped away from the fridge. Maybe we should go sometime. I didn't respond. That night, during dinner, my husband talked about home repairs. Something about the back deck needing sanding. The nephew nodded politely but said little. I excused myself early and took the trash out just to breathe air that hadn't passed through any of their lungs. Behind the house, under the porch light, I realized I hadn't felt like myself in months. Or maybe years. And the scary thing was, I wasn't sure I missed the person I used to be. The next morning, the nephew offered to help in the garden. My husband laughed. She's territorial about her tomatoes, he said. But I said yes. Because why not? We were outside for hours. He asked questions. Told stories. Mostly listened. He wasn't flirtatious. Just present. Engaged. Something I hadn't felt from my husband in ages. I forgot how quiet it is out here, he said. Quiet's good, I replied. Too much quiet gets loud. We laughed. And then he said, I like spending time with you. I didn't answer. The next few days passed in a blur of avoidance. I busied myself. With errands. With cleaning. With anything that would stop me from thinking about what hadn't happened. Until one afternoon. I was folding towels in the laundry room. The door creaked open. He stood there, half in shadow, holding a missing sock. Looking for this, he said. I laughed. Too quickly. Thanks. He stepped closer. No touching. No words. Just proximity. And before anything could happen, my husband called from the kitchen. You guys seen my phone charger? We both froze. And I realized then just how thin the walls in this house really were. My husband's voice cut through the air like a blade, shattering whatever was building between us in the laundry room. I stepped back first, pretending to straighten the pile of towels, pretending my pulse wasn't racing. The nephew handed me the sock. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The silence said enough. Then he left the room, casually, like nothing had happened. I followed moments later, moving straight into the kitchen where my husband stood, holding a charger and sipping his coffee. He looked up, oblivious. Found it. Was in the guest room under the side table. Think your nephew's nesting already. I forced a laugh, my throat tight. He's getting comfortable, that's for sure. We went to the store that afternoon, my husband and I, Home Depot, of all places. He was determined to repaint the deck. As we wandered through aisles of stain samples and brushes, he talked about future plans, about maybe replacing the grill, adding a pergola. I nodded and smiled at the right times, but I wasn't really there. My thoughts were stuck on a moment that hadn't even happened. But it almost had. And that almost was worse than anything real. Because it lived on repeat. On the way home, my husband said, "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" "Just tired," I replied. That night, I stayed up late, reorganizing the pantry of all things. I kept trying to find control in small tasks, hoping it would bleed into bigger things. It didn't. The house was quiet. Too quiet. At some point, I walked out to the backyard and sat on the porch steps. The wind was warm. The stars dull. Then I heard footsteps on gravel. I turned. It was him. Walking back from wherever he'd been, hoodie pulled over his head. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked, regretting it instantly. He shrugged. "Same as you, I guess." We didn't talk more. He just nodded once and disappeared inside. The next morning started like any other. My husband left early to meet a friend for a golf round. The nephew came downstairs around 9, hair messy, wearing a band shirt and sweatpants. "You want to go somewhere today?" he asked while making coffee. I hesitated. "Where?" He thought for a second. "Anywhere. Just out." It sounded harmless. A drive. A distraction. I told myself it was better to go with him than sit around the house replaying Silence. We ended up in town. Parked near the library, walked toward Main Street. There was a street market, locals selling jam, candles, hand-sewn blankets. I browsed without buying, he followed, occasionally pointing out something odd or funny. At one booth, an older woman tried to sell us a couple's bracelet set. He looked at me with the faintest smirk. I shook my head and walked away quickly. We ducked into a small cafe. Brick walls, shelves full of old books, the kind of place where you could disappear for hours. We took a table by the window. "You used to smile more," he said after a while. "That's what people say when they want something from you," I replied. "I don't want anything," he said. "I just notice things." That silenced me. He asked about my life before the marriage, jobs, travel, college. No one had asked in years. My answers were slow at first. Then fuller. A little more color. I forgot how it felt to talk about myself like I was still a person who changed, not just someone who maintained. On the drive back, he rolled the windows down and let the wind rush in. The silence wasn't heavy this time. It felt oddly free. We passed a lake. He pointed. "Remember when we went swimming here when I was a kid? Your uncle got a sunburn so bad his skin peeled for a week. He tried to use whipped cream as sunscreen." I laughed, real laughter, surprising myself. "Want to stop?" he asked. I shouldn't have. But I did. The lake was quiet. Only a few people nearby, families on blankets, kids skipping stones. We walked down to the dock. Sat on the edge. Shoes off. Feet dangling. There was a moment when the conversation slowed and our eyes met. We didn't move. We didn't touch. We kissed. I didn't breathe for several seconds after. I pulled away first. Stood up too quickly. My voice shook when I said, "We need to go." He didn't argue. The drive home was silent. Not awkward, just full. Charged. When we pulled into the driveway, my husband's car wasn't there. I walked into the house, up the stairs, into my room. Closed the door. Stared at myself in the mirror. My reflection didn't look different. But something had shifted. An hour later, my husband returned. He came in laughing about something, probably a story his friend told. He kissed my cheek, asked what we'd been up to. I said errands. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I wandered downstairs. Needed water. Or maybe air. He was there, nephew, on the couch, watching something on mute. We made eye contact. Nothing else. "I'm sorry," I said. He didn't respond. The next morning, I avoided him. Left early. Groceries. Post office. Walked the aisles of Target for no reason. When I came home, I expected silence. Instead, I heard music from the backyard. Jazz, my husband's playlist. He was grilling. "I invited a couple of neighbors," he said cheerfully. "Thought we could use a little break." Within an hour, our yard was full. Folding chairs. Red Solo cups. Casual chatter. The nephew helped carry plates. He joked with the guests. You'd never guess anything strange was going on. One of the neighbors asked him, "So, you going into law like your uncle?" He laughed. I'm not as good at lying as he is. Everyone laughed. Except me. I sat at the edge of the patio, watching everything move around me in slow motion. Later, after sunset, most people left. My husband went to shower. I stayed outside, picking up napkins and paper cups. The nephew came over to help. "You okay?" he asked. "No." He didn't say anything for a while. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said eventually. "But I did." "You just felt something." It was enough. He looked at me. I looked away. When I turned back, he was gone. I went inside, turned off lights, locked doors, climbed the stairs in the dark. When I opened our bedroom door, I stopped cold. My husband was sitting on the edge of the bed, holding my phone in his hand. He looked up. "I was looking for the grill timer," he said quietly. "I opened the wrong drawer." He turned the screen toward me. A message thread. One line stood out. "I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at me in the laundry room." He didn't say anything else. And I had no idea if this was the end. Or the beginning. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The phone in his hand said everything. I stood frozen at the doorway, heart thudding louder than the silence between us. His thumb hovered above the screen, not scrolling, not shaking, just still. A stillness that felt louder than any outburst could have. His eyes never left mine, and yet there was nothing accusatory in them. Just the kind of clarity that made breathing suddenly feel like a chore. I tried. He stood. Quietly. Calmly. "You don't have to explain anything," he said, placing the phone on the nightstand. "But I think I need to take a drive." The door clicked shut behind him. And just like that, I was alone. I sat on the bed and stared at the spot where the screen had glowed just moments ago. I didn't dare touch it again. I couldn't. I felt like if I read the words I'd written, I'd unravel. I stayed in that room for what felt like hours, but when I finally went downstairs, the nephew was already in the kitchen, rinsing dishes like it was just another Sunday night. I paused at the foot of the stairs. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, not turning around. I didn't answer. I couldn't tell if the air between us was heavier or if it was just me sinking under my own weight. He turned finally. "He knows?" "I think so," I said. He dried his hands slowly and leaned against the counter. "Then this is the part where you tell me it's over." I said nothing. He gave a hollow laugh. "Of course." I stepped closer, but not too close. The kitchen felt smaller now, the light too warm, the walls too close. "I kissed you," I said, barely more than a whisper. "That was a mistake." He didn't argue. That made it worse. "You regret it," he said. "I regret a lot of things," I replied. He nodded, like he'd been expecting that answer. "I'll stay out of your way. I'll pack my things in the morning." But he didn't. And I didn't ask him to. The next day passed with a strange quietness. My husband didn't return that night. I didn't call him. I wasn't sure I had the right anymore. The nephew stayed in his room most of the morning. I busied myself with tasks I didn't care about. Laundry. Bills. Cleaning out the junk drawer. Around noon, he came downstairs. "Do you need anything from town?" he asked. I looked up, surprised by the casual tone. "No. I'm gonna go for a while." "Get out of here." "Okay." He grabbed his keys. "Text me if you need anything." Then he left. No drama. No tension. Just an absence where tension used to be. By evening, the house felt too quiet. I sat on the couch, wrapped in a throw blanket, watching a sitcom I wasn't really watching. The door opened around 9. I expected my husband. But it was him again. He looked tired. "I didn't mean to come back," he said, dropping his keys in the bowl. "I just kept driving in circles." He took a few steps forward and then stopped, watching me like he wasn't sure whether I was going to throw him out or not. "Do you want me to leave?" he asked. I stood. Walked to the kitchen. Poured him a glass of water. He followed, leaned on the other side of the island. "This isn't fair to anyone," I said. "I know. But I still don't know what I'm doing." "That makes 2 of us." The silence between us this time wasn't heavy. It was something else. Something unresolved, but calmer. And then, without speaking, without thinking, we kissed. I pulled away first. Again. "I shouldn't have done that," I whispered. "I didn't stop you," he said. Neither of us smiled. Neither of us ran. We just stood there for a moment, both too tired to lie. I went to bed without saying goodnight. The next morning, my husband was home. I heard the door open as I came down the stairs. He was in the foyer, setting down his duffel bag. "I needed air," he said, without looking up. "I have nothing more to say about that." I nodded. He walked into the kitchen. The nephew was already there, cereal bowl in hand. The 2 of them locked eyes. "Morning," my husband said curtly. "Morning," the nephew replied, neutral. I moved through the house like a ghost, not part of either conversation, not grounded in any moment. The day passed in a fog. That evening, we had dinner together. The 3 of us. At the same table. A bizarre sense of normalcy, like no one wanted to be the first to crack the illusion. After the plates were cleared, I stayed behind, scrubbing at a stain on the table that wasn't even there. The nephew came up behind me, leaned in slightly. "I'm leaving tomorrow," he said. I didn't turn around. That's probably for the best. I just didn't want to go without saying something. "You already said enough." He walked away. The front door opened and closed. I kept scrubbing. The next morning, he was gone. His things, his shoes, his scent in the hallway, all vanished. I felt relief. And a hollow ache. Later that week, my husband suggested a drive. Just us. Out of the city. Maybe clear the air. I agreed, hoping the distance would fix something the silence couldn't. We drove for hours. Through fields, past old barns, into little towns with fading gas stations and ice cream stands. He pulled off near a scenic overlook and we stepped out. Wind whipped through my hair. The sun was setting. It should have been peaceful. "You know," he said, staring out at the horizon, "I keep asking myself if I imagined it. If maybe you just needed something I wasn't giving." "I don't have answers," I said. "I'm not asking for any." We stood there for a long time. No touching. No closure. On the drive back, he put on music, classic rock, low volume. I stared out the window. When we got home, he parked the car and reached into the back seat. "Almost forgot," he said, handing me a paper bag. "Picked this up earlier." Inside was a small box. Jewelry sized. I opened it slowly. It was my wedding ring. I stared at it, then at him. "You took it off 2 months ago," he said. "Figured you might want it back." Then he got out of the car, went inside, and left me alone in the driveway. I sat there holding the ring, wondering what kind of person it would fit now. I sat alone in the car, holding the small velvet box in my lap. The ring lay inside like a relic, polished but weightless. I hadn't worn it in 2 months, Not since the night I forgot to put it back on after doing dishes. That's what I told myself. But now, in the quiet darkness of the driveway, the lie felt small and tired. I didn't follow my husband inside right away. I waited, hoping he'd come back out, say something, anything. He didn't. The windows stayed dark, the porch light humming above me, casting shadows that stretched across the gravel like warning signs. Eventually, I pocketed the ring, got out of the car, and went inside. The house felt cooler than usual. I moved through the kitchen and found a note on the counter. Gone to bed early. Big meeting in the morning. Lock the doors. Nothing more. I stood there, rereading it like a hidden message might reveal itself if I stared long enough. But it was just ink and distance. A polite form of silence. The guest room door was still closed. I turned the knob slowly. Empty. He was gone. I shouldn't have cared. I told him to leave. I said it was best. But I couldn't ignore the flicker of disappointment tightening in my chest. The next day I didn't speak much. My husband left for work early and didn't kiss me goodbye. I took that as permission to drift. By noon, I was cleaning the upstairs closet. Not because it needed it, but because I needed to move. I found boxes I hadn't touched in years. Photos. Ticket stubs. A Christmas ornament from a trip we never took. I opened a dusty jewelry box, searching for nothing in particular, and found a note tucked beneath an old brooch. It was from him. Not my husband. The other him. Just a scribbled phrase on lined paper. Some mistakes are worth repeating. I sat on the floor and stared at the words, not sure when he had left it or why. Later that afternoon, I heard tires on the gravel. I didn't look through the window, I just opened the door. He stood there, holding a canvas tote bag, sun in his eyes. I forgot my jacket, he said. It's in the laundry room. He stepped inside, brushing past me like we hadn't gone weeks without speaking. I followed him, unsure what I'd say when he turned around. But he didn't. He grabbed the jacket, slung it over his shoulder, and headed for the door. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Tried again. Do you regret it? I asked. He turned, slowly. No. That was all he said. Then he left. I stood there a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just let the moment expand until it felt like the whole house was built around it. The next morning, my husband asked if I wanted to join him on a drive to the vineyard. The one we used to visit once a year, every spring. It might be good for us, he said, already packing a cooler. I said yes, because saying no had become too easy. We drove in silence. Light conversation, mostly about the weather, traffic, gas prices. The safe things. The vineyard looked the same. Rows of vines, picnic tables under the oaks, a small wooden deck where local musicians played on weekends. We found a spot near the back, away from the families and the college kids taking selfies. He poured wine into 2 plastic cups and handed me one. I've been thinking about moving the grill to the side patio, he said. More shade over there. I nodded. He took a sip, then looked at me. You're not wearing it. What? The ring. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the velvet box. Opened it. The ring caught the light. But I didn't put it on. He watched me, then turned away, letting the silence hang. We didn't stay long. On the way home, the car ride was filled with a new kind of quiet. He didn't turn on music. I didn't open the window. When we got back, I walked inside ahead of him and went straight to the laundry room. The air in there still smelled faintly like detergent and spring. I stared at the washing machine, remembering the way he had stood beside me, just inches away, as if daring me to move first. I didn't hear the front door open again. I only heard the footsteps when they reached the kitchen. I turned the corner to find him back again. "I forgot my sunglasses," he said. This time, I didn't point. I walked over, grabbed them off the counter, and held them out. Our hands didn't touch. But the space between our fingers felt like it was collapsing in slow motion. We said nothing. We kissed. It wasn't fast. It wasn't urgent. It just happened, like a decision neither of us had to make because it had already been made. Then it ended. Quietly. Without apology. And he left. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the road in case he returned again. He didn't. But my husband did. He walked into the room around midnight, sat at the edge of the bed, and took off his shoes like it was any other day. Then he spoke. "You know, I ran into him." I didn't move. He kept his voice level. "At the store. Said he forgot something." I waited, breath caught. He asked if I needed help with anything around the house. Offered to swing by later this week. I turned toward him. He finally looked at me. "Strange, don't you think?" I opened my mouth. But nothing came out. He smiled. Not kindly. Not cruelly. Just tired. Then he stood and walked to the bathroom. The water started running. And I was left sitting there, unsure whether I had just imagined it, or if he knew everything. But that wasn't the twist. Not yet. The next morning, I went to take out the trash. As I stepped outside, something caught my eye under the porch table. A folded note. I unfolded it slowly. It wasn't from him. It was from her. "I don't know what's going on between you two, but I saw enough at the barbecue. You should figure it out before someone else does." No signature. Just a neighbor's stationery. My stomach dropped. Someone else knew. I stood frozen on the porch, the note trembling in my fingers as if the paper itself carried a heartbeat. The handwriting was unmistakably feminine, neat, slanted, familiar. I couldn't place it exactly, but something told me it wasn't written by someone distant. It came from close by. Too close. I read the words again. "I don't know what's going on between you two, but I saw enough at the barbecue. You should figure it out before someone else does." The air felt suddenly heavier, pressing down against my chest. The neighborhood had always felt like a small, safe bubble, front lawn hellos, shared recipes, polite smiles. But now it felt like eyes. Watching windows. Whispers in driveways. I folded the note carefully and tucked it into my back pocket, unsure whether to hide it or frame it like evidence. I carried the trash to the bin, the bag dragging behind me like a weight I couldn't let go of. As I closed the lid, I heard footsteps behind me. It was my husband, coffee in one hand, still in his work clothes. "You're up early," he said. "I couldn't sleep." He nodded. "Me neither." We stood in silence for a moment. The wind rustled through the trees, and the neighbor's dog barked once, sharply. "I'm heading into the office," he said. "Might be a long one." "All right." He took a sip from the mug, then hesitated. "Anything you need while I'm out?" "No." He nodded again, turned, and walked back inside without another word. I stood there until the garage door rolled closed. Then I pulled the note out again. Read it once more. I scanned the nearby houses, some windows drawn, others open. Curtains stirred slightly. I couldn't tell if it was the wind or someone watching from behind them. I went back inside and headed straight to the laundry room, opened the junk drawer, and stuffed the note beneath an old pile of batteries, coupons, and unopened instruction manuals. I closed the drawer slowly. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. I spent the day unable to focus on anything. I tried folding towels, wiping countertops, sorting expired spices. But everything came undone halfway. My thoughts kept looping. Who saw us? What exactly did they see? When? And most of all, what would they do with it? In the afternoon, I grabbed my keys and drove to the market. Not because we needed groceries, but because I needed to leave the house. To feel like someone else for an hour. I pushed a cart down every aisle without picking up a thing. Just movement. Just noise. At the checkout, I heard someone call my name. I turned. It was her. A neighbor. The one who lived 2 houses down. Blonde. Always wore perfect lipstick, even for morning jogs. She waved and approached, a small reusable tote on her shoulder. I meant to come by, she said. That barbecue last week, it was so lovely. Thanks, I replied. She smiled. Your nephew was charming. There was a flicker in her expression, too subtle to call out. She didn't say more. She just held eye contact for half a beat too long, then tilted her head slightly and added, "You two seem close." I laughed. Too quickly. Well, he's family. Of course, she said, reaching for a pack of gum from the impulse rack. Family. Always complicated. She checked out first, waved again with that same unreadable smile, and left. I stood there staring at the checkout screen, my items beeping slowly. I paid without looking at the total. When I got home, the house felt different. I set the groceries down and walked through the rooms, checking windows, curtains, locks. I don't know what I expected. But everything seemed more fragile now. Exposed. That evening, after dinner, my husband sat on the couch watching the game. I pretended to read a magazine at the table. The silence between us had settled into something stiff, permanent. After a while, he muted the TV. I think we need a weekend away, he said. I looked up. A weekend? Just us. A reset. I hesitated. Where? There's that cabin up near Lake Lanier. The one we stayed at a few years back. I remembered the place, wood-paneled, tucked among trees, no cell signal. Quiet. Okay, I said. He nodded, unmuted the game, and didn't say anything else. I didn't sleep much that night. Again. The shadows on the walls seemed to shift more than they should. I got up, walked through the house barefoot, checked doors. Everything locked. Still, I didn't feel safe. By morning, my decision was made. I packed a bag. I didn't leave a note. I didn't text. I just drove. I went to the lake. Not the one he mentioned. A different one. Smaller. More isolated. A place I used to visit years ago. Before. The parking lot was nearly empty. I sat by the shore, watching the water stir with wind and light. I didn't cry. I didn't think I could anymore. A few hours passed. Then a car pulled into the lot. I didn't move. Footsteps on gravel. Then he sat beside me. The nephew. You disappeared, he said. So did you. He didn't apologize. I didn't ask him to. We sat there, watching the sky darken slowly. I shouldn't be here, I said. I didn't ask you to be. We didn't speak for a long time. Then he turned to me. I thought about leaving, he said. Really leaving? Not just the house. I looked at him. Why didn't you? Because part of me hoped you'd come with me. The air cracked then, like something invisible finally gave way. I didn't answer. We walked to the car in silence. The road home stretched long and open under a purple sky. That night, we spent night together. And in the morning, I woke alone. I thought he was in the shower. Or walking the trail behind the cabin. But his shoes were gone. His jacket. His bag. Everything. I walked outside, called his name. Nothing. Then I saw it. On the table. A note. But not from him. It was my husband's handwriting. I followed you. I saw everything. Papers will come soon. I won't stop you from going. Just don't come back. No signature. Just that. I stood in the doorway, wind catching the edge of the note, lifting it slightly like it might float away. But it didn't. It stayed. Heavy. Still. And the cabin felt suddenly colder than it had the night before. The note trembled slightly in my hand, though there was no wind inside the cabin. My eyes scanned it again and again, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something gentler, something easier to explain. But they didn't. I followed you. I saw everything. Papers will come soon. I won't stop you from going. Just don't come back. I set the note down carefully on the table, like it was something fragile. My pulse thudded in my ears, but my body stayed still. The room hadn't changed since the night before, same cheap rug, same half-drunk bottle of red wine on the counter. But I wasn't the same inside it. And neither was the silence. I checked the driveway, the road, the nearby trees. No sign of either of them. The cabin was truly empty. Just me and the consequences. I packed slowly, not sure what to take. I left the coffee mug we'd used, left the sweater he'd tossed over the chair, left the pillow with the slight indentation where I knew his head had rested. When I stepped outside, the sun was already high. It felt too bright, too exposed. I drove back with the windows down, hoping the wind would strip some part of this off me. It didn't. At home, the house was quiet. The curtains were drawn, the thermostat blinked idle. I opened the door to the guest room out of habit. Empty. The bed was made. The closet open. Nothing left. In the kitchen, I found another note on the fridge. Moved in with Mark for now. Take your time figuring out what comes next. That was it. No signature. No warmth. Not even resentment. Just the facts, typed on a printer page and held up by the same magnet we used for holiday cards. I left the kitchen and walked the length of the house 3 times. Every room looked the same, but the air inside each of them felt different. As if the walls were still absorbing everything I'd done. I spent the rest of the day in motion. I cleaned out the pantry, boxed up old books, swept the garage. I didn't stop moving until dusk. When the sun dipped low enough to paint the fence gold, I sat down for the first time. It all felt like it happened too fast, and far too slowly at once. In the mirror, I looked older. Not from age, but from everything that had passed through me and refused to leave. The next morning, I took the car into town. I stopped by the post office, the pharmacy, then wandered aimlessly through a consignment store. I wasn't looking for anything, I just didn't want to be home. That's where I saw him again. He was standing outside a coffee shop, laughing with someone. A woman. She had a bright scarf and hair the color of chestnuts, pulled back in a clip. They looked comfortable together. Familiar. I didn't stop. I walked right past them, head high, breath caught. He didn't see me. Or if he did, he didn't look. Back home, I sat on the back porch, barefoot, watching the wind roll through the tall grass. I thought about calling someone. A friend. A cousin. Anyone who wouldn't ask the questions I couldn't answer. But I didn't. Instead, I opened my laptop. Checked my email. Nothing. No papers yet. No updates. Just newsletters and promotions from stores I no longer cared about. Then I heard the knock. It wasn't loud. Just 2 quiet taps. I opened the door slowly, not knowing what, or who, I hoped for. It was him. He stood there, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes tired. I thought you left, I said. I did. And came back? I had to see you. I didn't step aside, but I didn't close the door either. I didn't know he would follow me, I said. I figured. Did you know he saw? I do now. Silence again. I saw you today, I added. At the cafe. He looked down. She's just someone from school. She looked happy. She didn't know me before. Neither did I. He looked up at that. That's not true. I stepped back. Just enough to let him inside. He didn't move. I didn't come to stay, he said. Then why? To say goodbye, properly. I nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph. A printed one. It was of the lake. The one where we first kissed. The photo was slightly out of focus. I didn't remember anyone taking it. You dropped this, he said. I took it carefully. It felt heavier than paper. He turned to leave. But before stepping off the porch, he added, I meant what I said, you know. About mistakes. I know. Then he walked down the steps, hands in his pockets, and didn't look back. I closed the door, slid the photo into the drawer by the keys, and returned to the kitchen. That night, I dreamt of the house being on fire. But I didn't wake in a panic. I woke to the sound of a knock. Another one. I checked the clock. Just past midnight. When I opened the door, it was my husband. His face was pale. His shirt wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I need to talk to you, he said. I stood aside this time. He walked in, stood in the center of the living room, then turned slowly to face me. You need to see this, he said. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. Opened the photo gallery. And there, without a word, handed it to me. It was a picture of us. Me and the nephew. Not touching. Not kissing. But standing on the dock at the lake. Staring at each other like the world had stopped. I didn't take this, he said. It wasn't me either. He nodded. I found it on my car windshield this morning. No note. No explanation. I looked at the photo again. It was clear. Centered. As if taken by someone who had time. My voice barely rose above a whisper. Who would do that? He didn't answer. And that's when it hit me. Someone else was watching us. Still. I stood there with his phone in my hand, staring at the photo again, trying to convince myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe someone had been hiking, or passing by with a zoom lens, or taking scenic pictures and accidentally captured us in the background. But the framing was too perfect. Too still. We weren't blurred. We weren't far away. We were the center of the shot. The dock. The lake. The way he looked at me. The way I didn't look away. I handed the phone back, fingers stiff. My husband didn't move. He just watched me with a tired patience, like he had already decided what came next and was only waiting for me to catch up. I don't know who would have taken it, I said. He didn't respond. We stood like that for a long time, neither of us speaking, the photo between us like a loaded weapon no one wanted to hold anymore. He finally turned and walked into the kitchen. The refrigerator door opened, then closed. A glass clinked. He came back with water and sat down on the couch like it was any other night. I stayed by the door, unsure whether I was meant to follow or leave. You still love him? He asked suddenly. I didn't answer. I'm not asking as your husband, he added. Just as someone who's trying to understand how we ended up here. My voice came out quieter than I intended. It's not that simple. No. It never is. He finished the water and placed the glass on the coffee table. Then stood up again, walked past me, and went upstairs. I stood in the living room for another hour. The next morning, his side of the bed was cold. His keys were gone. So was the car. I found a note in the entryway. I'm staying at Mark's through the weekend. Take the time you need. It didn't feel like generosity. It felt like retreat. I walked into the kitchen, made coffee, didn't drink it. I sat at the table, staring out the window. The neighbor's sprinklers clicked on. The newspaper truck passed. The world spun like it always did. By noon, I'd convinced myself the photo was the end of it. A final blow. The closing curtain. But then I saw him again. The nephew. Standing outside the hardware store downtown, loading a box into the back of a pickup. I almost didn't recognize him in a black t-shirt and sunglasses. He looked older, more tired. I parked without thinking. Got out. Walked toward him. He saw me before I reached him. Straightened up, arms crossed. You shouldn't be here, he said. I didn't know you'd be here. He didn't smile. Right. I looked at the box. Moving? Eventually. We stood there on the sidewalk, awkward in the late summer heat, surrounded by the smell of pavement and gasoline. I got the photo, I said. He didn't flinch. I figured. Someone took it. Seems like it. I waited for him to say more. He didn't. Do you know who? He shook his head. No one that matters anymore. That felt like a closing line. But I didn't walk away. I need to know if you gave it to him, I said. He looked at me like I'd just insulted him. No, he said. Are you sure? He stepped closer. Not angry, just firm. I didn't give it to him. I didn't send it. I didn't show it to anyone. You think I want to blow up everything just to be petty? I didn't respond. He looked past me, then back. Look. Whatever this was, it's not sustainable. You know that. I know that. We had a moment. A bunch of them. But that's all they were. My mouth went dry. So that's it? I think it was always going to be. I nodded. Okay. Then I turned and walked away. Didn't look back. Not until I was already behind the wheel. He didn't watch me leave. At home, the silence was unbearable. The walls too familiar. The floors too still. I wandered the house aimlessly. Passed by the room he used to stay in. The door creaked when I opened it. It looked the same. Except on the desk. There was a small manila envelope. My name written in blue ink. Inside, a printed photo. The same one. Dock. Lake. Us. But behind it, another image. This time, it was me. Sitting on the back porch. Alone. Book in hand. Eyes distant. I don't remember that moment. I don't know who took it. It was grainy, zoomed in from a distance. But it was me. Tucked inside the envelope was a note. Typed. I know what you've done. You're not as hidden as you think. This isn't over. No name. No address. No indication of who sent it. No fingerprints. No handwriting. Nothing human. Just proof. Proof that someone else was watching. Still. I stood in the center of the room, manila envelope in one hand, the grainy photograph in the other. My name, printed on the front in neat blue ink, now looked like a threat. I turned the envelope over again, hoping for something, an initial, a trace, a clue. Nothing. Just paper. Just silence. The second photo burned more than the first. The first was ours. This one was mine. And I had no memory of that day, that moment, that posture. How long had they been watching? Or was it just luck, just a neighbor's long lens, a fluke? I didn't know what frightened me more, the idea that it was planned or that it was random. I placed the photo face down on the kitchen table and walked to the sink. My hands moved through water and dishes without thought. I needed movement. I needed normalcy. But there was nothing left in the house that felt normal anymore. It wasn't just the absence of people. It was the presence of something else, something that now lingered in corners and behind doors, quiet and invisible. I couldn't stay. I went upstairs, pulled a small suitcase from the closet, and started packing without knowing where I was going. Jeans, shirts, toiletries. I didn't need much. I wasn't going far. I just needed out. A break. One night. Somewhere that didn't echo back everything I'd done. By late afternoon, I was driving south. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't leave a note. I turned off my phone. I kept the windows up. The hum of tires on the road was the only sound I could stand. It felt like a shield. 3 hours later, I checked into a small roadside inn off Route 27. A woman behind the desk handed me the key and said breakfast started at 6. I nodded. I wouldn't be there for breakfast. The room was clean, nondescript. Beige walls. Pale bedding. The kind of place designed to forget. I dropped my bag by the dresser, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the blank television screen. There was nothing left to say. Nothing left to rehash. Just the facts, the failures, the fallout. I didn't sleep much. My body lay still, but my mind twisted, knotted, circled itself in loops I couldn't cut through. Around 3 a.m., I sat up and stared at the window. Then I got up and opened it. The air outside was heavy, still. I leaned on the sill, breathing in the quiet, trying to empty myself of thought. That's when I saw it. Across the parking lot, next to the ice machine, stood a figure. Tall. Still. Facing the building, not moving. I couldn't make out the face, but I didn't need to. My stomach turned in a slow, deliberate churn. I closed the window, shut the blinds, and backed away. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe it wasn't even him. But I couldn't shake the certainty that it was. I didn't sleep after that. At sunrise, I showered, dressed, grabbed my bag, and left without checking out. The lot was empty. No figure. No cars I recognized. But the feeling stayed. I drove home faster than I should have, heart lodged in my throat the entire way. I didn't stop for gas. I didn't stop at all. When I pulled into the driveway, I could tell something was different. The front door was open. Just slightly. Not wide enough to seem broken into, but enough to be wrong. I left the car running. Took a step forward. Another. Inside, everything looked the same. Lights off. Air still. The scent of the house unchanged. Then I saw it. A suitcase. By the stairs. Not mine. His. I turned, and there he was. The nephew. Standing in the doorway to the kitchen. Hands in his pockets. You left, he said. You followed me. I didn't. Then how did you know where I was? He shrugged. You always do the same thing when you want to disappear. I stepped back. Why are you here? He didn't answer right away. Then, because I thought you might still choose me. I closed my eyes. There is no choice, I said. Sure there is. You don't live in the wreckage you create. I do. I never asked you to do this alone. That's not how consequences work. He stared at me for a long time, then reached down and zipped his suitcase. Then I guess this really is goodbye. I think it always was. He moved to the door, paused. One last thing. I waited. He opened the door, but didn't step out. He came to see me, you know. Who? Your husband. My throat tightened. When? 2 days ago. He wanted to hear it from me. Wanted to know if you meant it. If you'd ever leave with me. And what did you say? I told him no. Why? Because you weren't coming. And he already knew that. He left. The door clicked softly behind him. I sank onto the stairs. And that's when the second car pulled up. Not his. Not my husband's. Another one. And from the driver's side came my husband. But he wasn't alone. He walked to the passenger door. Opened it. And out stepped a woman. She was maybe 30. Smartly dressed. Confident posture. They didn't speak. Not to me. Not to each other. They walked past me. Into the house. And I didn't stop them. Because I understood. The consequences weren't done. They had just begun.